Hey there, welcome to Extra Healthy-ish, the big sister podcast to Healthy-ish. Both podcasts are from Body and Soul, and I'm your host, Felicity Harley. Now, you know those questions, the ones you are dying to ask your PT or your fitness instructor or your trainer, but perhaps you feel a bit mortified, silly, embarrassed, nervous to ask. Well, we have got it covered on Extra Healthy-ish today. We have listed all the questions you have been dying to ask, and we have got a PT in the house, well, on Zoom from Brisbane. Jed McDonald ran his own personal training business for 8 years, and he still does, and is now leading personal trainer and business development manager at Again Faster. And he's going to answer all those questions. Jed, thank you so much for coming on Extra Healthy-ish. Now, well, you have got 6 kids. So how do you stay extra healthy-ish in your life? Please tell me they help you stay extra healthy-ish.
They definitely motivate me to stay extra healthy-ish. I mean, the only reason I really train is so I can throw my children as high in the air as possible, no matter how old they are. But it's so good. I mean, for me, I've attended gyms, all my life, and probably more recently from, the 3rd or 4th child, I really decided to make the investment into getting some gear for home, just because I didn't have time to travel even 20 minutes, 15 minutes one way to a gym and then 15 minutes back. We don't have that half an hour, So these days I spend training quite late at night, sometimes 8, sometimes 8:30, sometimes 9. But I try to keep those sessions short and sweet. And if I've got more time, I utilize it, training, but I can just walk straight into my garage and that's where I train. And the girls, on the weekend, they join me. And, for me, it's really important for equipment like that, like a barbell and dumbbells and kettlebells, to not be foreign when they grow up, So I really want them to not walk into a gym at 15 and go, I'm scared, I don't know what that stuff is. I want them to be happy and be able to utilize it, especially the girls. I feel like that's something that a lot of teens in this day and age aren't familiar with. So I really want to kind of break that mold.
What are the basic things you've got in your gym? What equipment have you got in there?
I've got a fair bit. I'm quite blessed with where I work, that I have the access to equipment. But I think when I first ever decided that I was going to get some equipment, I didn't work at Again Faster, so I had no access in that way. But I got myself a barbell. I got myself some bumper plates. Dumbbells are what I invested kind of the most in, because they were the most versatile piece, and kettlebells. So those kinds of pieces. I had a skipping rope. So I had a skipping rope. I could run, obviously, and I had some weights to be able to work through my traditional movements, like a deadlift, a squat, and things like that. And then I had dumbbells and kettlebells to utilize for everything else.
So it is quite easy setting up a home gym in some ways, isn't it? You just need a few things off you go.
It is. And I think on top of that, though, is some form of education around how to use them. My biggest thing as a PT as well is we need to make sure we're executing that movement safely. So even if you do go out and buy, Fandangle gym equipment, you really want to be educated in how to use that. And there is, 1,000 professionals out there ready and willing to teach you. You just need to make sure that when you're speaking to those people, you're asking the right questions and making sure that what you're doing is safe. And it's going to be effective for you, because you don't want to end up injured, 3 weeks in either. Right?
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Now, let's take it from the home gym to perhaps the group fitness class, or if you're after a trainer, your own PT. Yeah. What are some questions we should ask ourselves before choosing wherever we're going to exercise?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I would really hope that the facility that you're going to would do this for you anyway, but in terms of just being armed with some questions, I feel like number one, just the general feel when you enter that location. Are you welcomed? Do you not just feel like another number? Because that's going to really help you then start to create relationships with the person at the front desk, and obviously people in your class, really helps, obviously, if you're going with someone that you know already, that might be able to introduce you to those people. But you want to make sure that you're a good fit for each other, and that will come from your ability to be able to build relationships with those people. So if the trainer welcomes you into the class, can give some high fives and ask you a little bit about yourself, that's a really good start. That, potentially it's going to be a good fit for you.
Because that's what's going to keep you coming back, isn't it? Really, it's those relationships honestly, that you build.
It honestly is 110%. It's relationships, because that's your experience. If you're having a positive experience, then you'll absolutely be ready and willing to come back, because then you'll get results. And then that'll keep you coming back. And then, the relationships get better and results get better. And so, it's a win-win-win.
What about when you're actually in there training? What are some, often we just go in and we do our thing. So if we're in a gym or we meet our PT and we just, run through the exercises, how can we get more out of it? What are some questions we can ask when we're training?
I think, making sure that you're doing that exercise right, finding out, if it's a one-on-one trainer, or even the advantage of like boutique fitness spaces in this day and age, like Orange Theory and F45 and, Reunion Training. There's some other kind of niche, smaller boutique fitness places out there where they have kind of caps on their classes. So that you might be one of like 10 clients to one coach kind of deal. You have the ability to ask these questions when you're training in those small group environments. And I think number one is, what are the benefits of this exercise? Because I've seen many, ridiculous exercises that people are doing. So it's really good, that you're in a place that's educated, or the sessions are coming from a place of education, when you can ask a question like, what is this benefit? What's the benefit of doing this exercise? And the trainer can come back to you and go X, Y, Z.
And I think just asking questions. Just ask questions. Ask, is my form okay? Am I lifting the correct way? Because often you're just not sure, especially if you're in a group fitness setting.
Yeah, that's right. And then that comes back to that safety of movement. You want to make sure that you're moving well, and you should be able to ask that. Your coach should be welcoming enough for you to ask those questions and receive answers. Because then if it's safe training, you've built relationships. So you're happy to come back for the relationships, and then you get results, and then you're not getting injured because you're training safely. There's so many benefits to just asking questions, for sure.
Now let's talk about lifting weights. And I know a lot of our listeners already lift weights, but how do we know if we can go heavier and whether we'll hurt ourselves? Because often it might hurt your hand, just say lifting a dumbbell, and it's really heavy, and you're like, I'm getting blisters, but should I be lifting it or not? What's your guidance here about how much weight should we lift when we're strength training?
I think depending on how long you've been strength training for, will give you that experience. I know it sounds like cliche probably, but that is it. If you have lifted consistently for 3 years, when you can, when that's just hurting the callus on your hand, in terms of the dumbbell.
I may be speaking from experience here.
Oh, okay. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I think, in addition to that, the most important thing when it comes to weightlifting for me is technique. Because if you're lifting safely and efficiently under guidance, at least initially, you will know what felt bad and you will know what felt good. And that will allow you to kind of push yourself. And ideally, the coach is guiding you, whether it's in a personal training session or a group training session. The coach will go, that looks a bit light. You could probably go heavier, and you will be able to make an educated call on that, because you know what good form feels like because you practiced it, as opposed to the opposite.
We'll be back after this short break with more from Jed. And how long should we rest between sets when we're strength training? Often when you're in a gym, you see people just walking around for 5 minutes and then
try to go check my phone and tell people I'm here.
Exactly. I've got to look at myself in the mirror. and then you see other people just going back to back to back. Is there a, scientifically proven time?
There's definitely not a one size fits all. So many. I like to keep training simple. I feel like unless you're at the peak of your sport or chosen, practice, you don't really need to worry too much about tempo this and, broken down rest for that. But I like to, when I'm purely going through my strength sets, and that's usually traditional deadlift, bench, squat, press. I do some Olympic weightlifting as well. I'll normally try to start a new set on the 3 minutes. So if I start on 0 and I finish my set, it might take me, 30 seconds or something like that. Then I will start a new set on the 3 minutes. So that's, 2.5 minutes rest in between.
And what
that
about,
just keeps me in good time,
Yeah. What about rest days? How often do we really need these?
I think that's going to come down to experience as well. I think that every, train for 2 days, have a rest day after, or train for 3 days, have a rest day after, because training is definitely good for flushing out your body. So, even if it's an active rest day, if you hit the gym really hard for 2 whole days, your body's probably going to be sore. And there's such a thing as delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS as people call it. And that normally kicks in the second day. So if you've been able to move consistently after your heavy 2 days, go for a walk or go for a ride, or, just play with the kids in the yard or whatever it might be. I think that they're really important mentally as well as for your muscles.
Now, say we've got a gym membership and we've been there
Yep.
for a few months, or we've got a PT and we're feeling like we've reached a plateau. What's your advice here?
Definitely speak to a coach that you trust. So if you have been there for a few months and you've been training, and Jack and Penny, the coaches, and you've got a decent relationship with them, speak to them. They might say, well, Felicity, I don't think that you've actually used more weight on those dumbbells for the last 3 months, or 3 weeks or something like that. So I think that you might need to, I feel like you're really competent, you're lifting safely, everything else is right, your food is good. The only reason why you've hit your plateau is because you're choosing not to push yourself harder within that session. It could be as simple as that. There could be other factors like your food that are out of whack, or you might be under a lot of stress
or
at work
sleep,
or something like that. Who needs it? What even is sleep? But yeah, there's so many different factors, but it could be something as simple as what the coach is actually witnessing in the gym that you don't even know because you're just going through the motions. So I would speak to someone that you have, especially a coach, like an educated trainer within your gym space, about that for sure.
And what about motivation? I mean, you're a PT. How do you keep people motivated? Because often you just, you're doing the deadlifts or you're just going through the motions.
Totally. Yeah.
How do you motivate people? How can we motivate ourselves?
Well, honestly, even PTs need PTs sometimes, right? Because I feel like I've got a pretty busy life. I've got a lot of kids at home. I've got a full-time job. I do some training as well, school and all that jazz. So there's so much there. So sometimes I don't really feel like going out to the gym at 8:30 at night, but I know that I'll be better for it. And, ideally I'm increasing my lifespan and all those things that are important to me. What motivates me is being able to throw my children up in the air as high as possible, being able to spend the rest of my life with them and my wife, So longevity is my goal now. I don't need to be hitting PRs, every second week. So that's what motivates me. What motivates one of my clients at the moment is weight loss, same thing. What's motivating him is the fact that he would love to run a marathon again. And to do that safely for his joints, he needs to shed about 6 kilos, because he's 6 kilos heavier than he was when he last was really good at running. And he's had joint problems and things like that since because of that weight. So that's what motivates him, is like that light at the end of the tunnel is October, when he can once again run a marathon, So I think you need to really break down to something simple what it is that you really want, figure that out. And if you need to speak to someone, do it with a friend. Like moral support and support through friends is like a beautiful thing. You can kind of keep each other accountable if you don't have access or can't afford to pay for a trainer, which is realistic, So really simplify what it is that you want, and ideally that's enough to keep you motivated. And if it's not, well, then maybe you need to reassess.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a good point, because often with exercise, we do go through dips, don't we? We're like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And maybe it's time to look at a different form of exercise, or
That's right, exactly.
switch it up, or try something new.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Now, just lastly, what do you wish people did, well, say more of and less of in the gym?
That's a good question. I really wished that people took a little bit of time to get educated. That's probably my biggest thing. And not like, you don't have to pay for a trainer. As I said before, that's not always realistic. You don't have to pay for a trainer, but take a little bit of, if you're interested enough to want to lose 20 kilos, then you should be interested enough to at least read and ask questions of your trainer, as you said before. All of those things, because that education is going to build up over time. And it's going to allow you to change the way that you train in a positive way, ideally, and not hit walls, so often and be able to, get yourself to where you want. So I feel like education is something that I wish lots of people did more of, because apart from that, they see what they see on Instagram, or they see what they see on, a news outlet, and then that's it. That's the thing. That's what I'm going to do. And they're, failure comes all too soon, unfortunately, and then it's really hard to get back off that train.
Yeah, actually, just add to that. One thing that I did once is I went and paid for a PT for 6 months.
Yeah.
To actually teach me how to lift weights properly. It was after the birth of one of my children, and I just needed to know how to lift weights after giving birth. And it was one of the best things I've ever done, because it really set up my knowledge of this is actually how I do a deadlift properly. And I never knew that. I just always went off, whatever app I had, and it was so good.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And nothing beats that, that tangible one-on-one experience. It doesn't, but you can definitely fill the gap for as long as possible, if you're in a class scenario. But it comes right back to what we spoke about at the start, and that's just asking questions. More people just need to ask more questions. And your gym should be inviting enough to allow that to happen,
Yeah, I like that. Jed, thank you so much for coming on Extra Healthy-ish.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Felicity.
Well, there are your questions answered. And what was the one takeaway tip from that? Well, to ask questions. Just go and ask your trainer. If you need motivation, if you need some tips on how to lift a dumbbell, if you need some more help reaching your goal, just ask. That's what they're there for, to help you get better in the gym or whatever type of training you're doing. If you want more from us, remember Extra Healthy-ish. We publish a new episode for your wonderfully healthy and fit ears every morning, Monday to Thursday. For more, head to bodyandsoul.com.au or join the conversation via Body and Soul on Instagram or Facebook. Thanks again for tuning in. And if you have a moment, we'd be so grateful if you can rate, review and subscribe to this podcast. And until tomorrow, we'll ask those questions and stay extra healthy-ish.